All right, welcome to Closers Are Losers. I'm here with my co-host, Matt Ryder, our CEO of Seventh Level. I'm the chairman of Seventh Level. And thankful to be on here with you. I'm in Arizona, Matt, so I'm getting the sun. We've got this nice little vacation property here. We come out here, April, get some sun, before it gets really hot out here and roasting. In Sydney, it's kind of cold right now, right?
Yeah, it's kind of getting towards winter. So it's starting to get a little bit chilly. It doesn't get Missouri shit cold, but
you have to wear a jacket, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Nice little jacket for you. So welcome to the show. So today I want to go over, so just real quick, if this is the first time on this show, we are an organization that helps people just like you listening to us, that you're watching us, salespeople, coaches, executives, business owners. And we help you by transforming the way you and your sales teams sell by learning how to use human behavior in your sales process, like techniques, questions that work with human behavior rather than against it. Now, we call that NEPQ. So if you hear us talk about NEPQ, stands for Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questioning. And we teach you the right tonality, put your prospects at ease, eliminate sales pressure, and get your prospects to persuade themselves. That's what the show is all about in our Facebook group and training. Today, I wanted to go over consequence questions. I wanted to, a lot of people, I get random people that message me in Facebook all the time. They're always like, can you help me? Like, I always get these objections, like they want to think it over, or they want to do this in 6 months from now, or a month from now, or call me back later. And it's like, they don't know how to build urgency in the sale. Have you seen that on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess what happens if we don't talk about consequence questions and nothing changes in this podcast over the next 3, 6, or 12 months, Jeremy? What happens then?
Well, our listeners don't get to learn how to build urgency to be able to sell more of their products and service. No, but there's going to come a point in the conversation where you have to get your prospect to think about the consequences of what if they don't do anything about solving this problem that they just told you they have, like the what if consequence. All selling is, I was doing a live, in our private Facebook group, Sales Revolution, right before this. And I was talking to our members of that group about what selling actually is. All selling is about change. It's how good you are with your questioning skills and going under the surface, not surface level questions, but it's how good you are with your questioning skills and your listening skills with your tonality that basically help your prospect in their mind believe and think that it's far more risky for them not to get the money and to stay in their situation and stay in the status quo than it is to actually get the money to solve the problem and actually get where they want. It's far more risky if they don't do anything. And that's not us telling them. It's asking certain consequence questions that allow them to empower themselves and tell themselves, like, if I don't do anything, like, all of this is going to happen.
I think there's a couple things. Like, I think as salespeople, sometimes we take for granted that, because there's no consequence without a goal.
Yeah.
Right. So like we have to get the real goal. I think and that's a skill in itself, which we could probably do in the podcast, which is identifying when someone's, I don't believe the whole buyers are liars thing, but I believe that like people will only tell you information when they feel comfortable telling it to you. So I learned this, like when I used to sell a lot of weight loss and people would come to me saying, I'd just love to lose 10 pounds. And a lot of traditional salespeople, then the moment they hear that, they go, why 10 pounds? What is it about 10 pounds? When was the last time you were 10 pounds lighter? Right. But I know that in the first 5 or 10 minutes of a call, that is probably only part of the story. They're not lying to me, but that's just what they feel internally. One, potentially telling themselves, because it's a lot easier to tell yourselves you want to lose 10 instead of 50. Right. That's just, they're just rationalizing in their own head. So once we get the real goal, and I think as we take for granted sometimes as salespeople, we're usually very goal-oriented people, and we have genuinely thought and discussed about our goals, whereas a lot of people have not.
Yeah.
especially people in just general population, not entrepreneurs or whatever, like they never really discuss in detail their goal and the tangible and emotional benefits of getting the goal. And so we have to set that up first and then give the person the opportunity and have some techniques in order to actually be able to get that. Then from there, we need to have them have a genuine contemplation of failure,
Yeah.
because they're, one of our clients, Ryan Serhant, he calls it the wall, and his wall moment is something that he's forever running away from.
Yeah.
And it was a moment in 2006, I think it was. He was a young guy in New York, sat on he was on the subway, didn't have enough money to buy his dinner.
Yeah.
And he started crying right there and then in the subway. And he had two decisions. He said, I can go back to Texas, which is where his family is, and he would have had a fine life, but he knew what that would be. Or he could just man up and keep going.
Yeah.
And it was that moment where he thought about, if I fail and I give up, this is what will happen. This will be the next 50, 60 years of my life.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not willing to settle for that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move forward. And I think like that's a really important concept for people to understand, because that's really what is the catalyst for change in most instances.
Well, and you got to look at Ryan. Ryan was an easy prospect because he already knew, like he already had that internal drive and that motivation to want to change the situation. But what all of us have to understand is that most prospects are not like Ryan Surratt. They're not internally motivated. They don't know what they don't know. They don't have that drive. So it's up to you, the sales professional, to be able to ask them certain questions that allow them to internally get to where Ryan's at. But they can only do that with your questions you're asking them that's caused them to really open up and not just tell you their why, like you talked about, but really tell you what's behind the why. That's the difference between a good salesperson, even a great salesperson, compared to like the legends. Like if you want to be a legend or like a savage in sales, as we call it, you have to be the best at not just finding out their why. Anybody can find out a why, but it's you're finding out what's behind the why. Like what's driving that why? Like what problem, what happened in that prospect's life or their situation or whatever, depending on what you sell, B2B or B2C, that caused the problem to really drive them wanting to change and to be able to do that with you. So it's all about your questioning skills that allow your prospects to visually see that and feel that in their mind and get them internally motivated to want to do something about it, like Ryan got himself to.
Yeah, exactly. So consequence questions for me, and in particular, like the kind of, I guess the way that I sell, because we all use NEPQ as a framework, you know what I mean? But everyone's obviously going to have their own individualistic way of doing things. And I think for me, I lean very, very heavily on consequence questions.
Me too.
I pretty much plow through the rest of it and then and sit there and consequence for as long as I need to, until what I consider, what I like to call it like the contemplative sigh. It's just like, well, that would not be good. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, now I know they're there, right? Because one of the things, like from the industries that I used to sell in, is you used to get a lot of people going, well, I'm going to do it no matter what. Yeah. And like that can be a good sign or it can be a bad sign, because it can be.
That's a red flag in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, you haven't contemplated, because, I would love to have a flying car, but I live in a reality of where cars do not fly. So I need to make my decisions based off that. So I'd love to be able to just, bank on the future, but I need to look at the here and now and what's in front of me. And like, if nothing changes, what will happen? And I want to know the day-to-day, the nitty-gritty, everything that's going to happen about that. Then that person is genuinely contemplated what happens if they don't succeed. And then I know that they're ready to hear my solution. Then and only then.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but it's, there's two parts of consequence questions. Consequence questions can be used in any part of the conversation to help prospects overcome their own concerns, to challenge them, right? That can happen in any part of the conversation. And the second format is it's asked right after your solution awareness questions. So let's take them through the process for a second. Situation questions, we help them find out their present situation, you and them, right? Your problem awareness questions help the prospects find out what their real problems are, maybe even problems they didn't know about before the call or the Zoom call or the meeting, if it's in person. what the root cause of the problems are, like how it happened, what's causing it, and then how it's affecting them. That's the key there, how it's affecting them. Then our solution awareness questions, the first half, are finding out what they've done about it in the past to change that, which helps them realize like, oh crap, I could have done something about this. I never have, right? And the second half is we're getting them to see what their future state or objective state will look like once their problems, like here's their situation, here's where they want to be, their future state, here's the gap, all these problems they have that's causing them not to get here. But it causes the back half of solution awareness questions, causes the prospect to view what their future is going to look like once the problem's solved. And then you go to consequence and you just rip it away. That's what consequence questions do. What if you don't do anything about this and the situation gets even worse? Now that's a generic NEPQ consequence question. We would tie, if it's a different, obviously different industries, we're going to tie in different parts there, but that's the format. What if you don't do anything about this, the problem, and your situation gets even worse, or you stay stagnant? So that gets them to think, and it like rips out what they just said they wanted, and it forces them to like pull you in like, oh, no, I'm going to do something about this. So at the end, after you've gone through the presentation, feedback what they said they wanted, showed them how we could solve it, and you asked your commitment questions, it's almost extremely hard or impossible for the prospect to then come back and say, well, this sounds good, but I think I need to wait 2 or 3 months to get involved. You just don't have that because they already told you and themselves why they have to change it now from your consequence questions.
Yeah. A lot of people ask tactical questions, but they need strategic answers. Like, what do I do when a prospect says this? Well, it's like, it's probably an upstream effect of you not effectively getting their problem or getting their goal or getting their consequence. Like that's first things first. You can have all these preloaded lines to deal with stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to deal with the upstream effects of what you're doing.
What did you say or not ask that triggered that objection to happen? So we talk about objection prevention. When Matt and I and our trainers train companies and organizations, it's more about objection prevention than it is objection handling. Because if somebody says, well, I keep getting this objection, well, we can give you some lines and some questions to ask to help them overcome it. But that's just the Band-Aid approach. Like, how is that happening? Like, it's like going to a doctor, right? And the doctor's like, here, just take these drugs. It'll make you feel better. Well, what's causing your bad health in the first place? You got to get that fixed. So what's in your sales process, or what are you saying or not asking that's triggering these objections to happen? And once you fix that with NEPQ, those objections get reduced 70, 80%. So much easier to sell.
Yeah. And then it turns from like difficult objection handling to relatively simple problem solving, right? Like a lot of the sales that we do are relatively objectionless, but there is a logistical conversation around like, well, I need to do this, this, and this. And then it's like, we might just take them through a very, very simple money objection handle, or even a timing objection handler, or a partner, whatever. It'd be very simple, but it really it's more semantic because we've got the buy-in. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize the way that we structure the presentation phase, like the entire goal of it is to get buy-in on specific parts of that product or service with such detail that they're telling the story themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, does that make sense? Okay, cool. And is there anything in there that is of most benefit to you? Is this the answer for you? Do you mind telling me why? Being skeptical, having that curiosity. And then it's like, you're making them dig in on their ideas. Right. And it's like, people don't realize how clever it is. This is kind of fanboying out. But when I realized how it was put together, I was like, oh, that's genius.
Sure.
I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Because it's like, you have the problem. Once you uncover the real problem, you uncover what they get when they solve that problem. Then you uncover why like what the emotional driver is behind the what. So I get this, this, and this. How does that make you feel to get that? You talk about that, you future pace it. Consequence questions, you take it away, right? And then you get a commitment question, which is a commitment to change. Right. Which is the catalyst for them to want to move forward. Then when you present, you get multiple buy-ins on the way, not the yes train, but you get buy-in from the prospect with detail about, which makes them solidify the idea even harder in their own brains. And then you can go through some relatively simple objection handling techniques. And that's how you can close at 70, 80, 90% in any industry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in your presentation, you're basically going over their problem, you're repeating back the problems they said they had, and maybe even other problems that prospects in their industry have that maybe they didn't come up with once you're asking them the questions. And then you're showing how your product or service solves each one of those challenges and problems. So at the end, it makes complete sense because you're feeding back the problems they said they had and how you solve them. And once it's solved, here's where it's going to take you, or here's what it's going to do for you. And it's very hard for them to come back and be like, I think I want to think it over. Like, I'm not sure. Now, even if it's in a B2B sale, average B2B company has 6.8 decision makers in that organization. That's not even enterprise. It's just normal SMB usually. So even if it's B2B, and it's a 2 or 3 month sales cycle, you're at least getting these little smaller commitments that are leading to the larger decision of them actually committing to purchase your product or service to solve their problem. Now, it might not be in the first call or the second call, but you're asking some of these commitment questions here towards the end that get them to take smaller commitments that lead to that sale.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like it's funny, like it really doesn't matter like what the industry, whether it's B2B, B2C, whatever, enterprise, SMB, like these principles ring true throughout them. Some of the delivery mechanisms might be somewhat different, and the time frames are all different, but like you're taking someone through the same process, and like the consequence questions, if anything, are sort of for especially like decent sized companies, like you get up to, $50-60 million a year, their consequences are actually far greater because like 1% changes create huge differences, especially to the bottom line of the owners or like directors who are on, say, bonuses and stuff like that. If you can increase profits by 1%, that could be $50 to $150,000 in the pocket of one of the directors, per quarter or per year.
I mean, it's the same thing. So, this is before you were with, us at Seventh Level and the CEO. This is before I even knew you. But 3 years ago, when I first started Seventh Level, one of our first clients, our first company client, B2B client, was Google AdWords, right? So they brought me in to train 4 of their divisions. And after I took them through the discovery process, they're like, if we can get a 5% increase in sales over the next 12 months, it's worth, we're talking tens of millions of dollars in those divisions. And I'm like, I sat back, I'm like, 5%. I actually said that, I'm like, 5% is that all you want, or would you rather be higher if you could? And they're like, oh my gosh, I mean, of course we want to be higher, but even if we got 5%, like we would qualify for these bonuses. And I'd be like, well, what would it do for you though, besides getting bonuses to your team? Well, I mean, off the record, like I would get promoted and blah, 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 blah. So I found out
advocacy
decision makers in there. She was the vice president of something. Google has like they have like 35 different divisions and like 1 billion decision makers, it seems like. That's a whole different conversation. But when we came in and I did like I think it was like a 6-day training. This is before our virtual training course or anything. Over the next 3 months, 244% increase in sales in those 4 divisions. And they said they went back and audited that 4 times because they didn't believe that was even possible. Like I said, they thought if they could get 5,
you should have got a rev share. Should have gone in for, hey, well, anything over 5%, I'll take 1%.
Well, I tell you what, if we would have done that, I wouldn't be
retired
right now. Right? That'd probably
be retired in that island behind you.
Made like 70 million from that. So, so it's all about, like you said, these big organizations, like these consequence questions and what we train them can have such a massive impact that even a 1% increase or a 5%, or even if they don't do anything about the problem and their revenue goes down by 2 or 3 or 5% the next year, and then they start losing shareholders and their stock becomes not as worth. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of effects there. And that's why the decision-making process is so critical for them. And that's why I want to think it over. I need to meet with 10 different companies or whatever you sell B2B, but that doesn't have to be the case. If you know how to ask these questions we're talking, it really speeds up your sales cycle. I mean, there's another company that we trained here 3 years ago, medical device sales, and their average sales cycle with the hospital and doctors was 9 months long. Taking the hospital administrator on golf. And I think this was before they made some rule changes in that. I don't think you can do that now. Taking them, bringing in lunches to them, like wining and dining them to maybe get a proposal. And 9 months later, I'm like, you guys, people don't buy Because you take them out to dinner, you take them golfing. Like anybody can do that. Any salespeople from all your competitors are doing the same damn thing. What separates you from anybody else? They all say they have the best product. They all say that they have the best cost. They all say they have the best customer support. The only difference is you being able to learn the right questions that help your prospects, these doctors, hospital administrators, build urgency around the problems that you're helping them uncover that they didn't even know they had. And we took their 9-month sales cycle down to about 3 months. That's a massive difference in revenue.
Huge. Yeah, huge. The turnover of money is just so much quicker. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like a lot of people get the objections like, I need to think about it, or partner, or money, or like now isn't the right time, or even like, I'm speaking to some of your competitors, or can you send me testimonials? Like all those things. And the people are like, oh, how do you handle when people ask for testimonials? And I was like, well, I can never get it ever.
I don't think I've ever had anybody ever ask me for testimonials.
Yeah. I used to get it. And I used to just say, well, are you looking for a reason to buy or not to buy? Like, what are you looking for? Cause I can just send you to my most successful client. You know what I mean? Like it's a stupid idea. Oh, can I talk to one of your clients? Well, okay. Yeah. I'll send you to my most successful. They're like, oh no, don't do that. Okay. Well, do you want me to send you to my least successful? The guy who never showed up, did any work? Well, no. I was like, so who do you want to speak to? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Right. But anyway, like it's just a symptom of a lack of urgency. That's all it is. Like, and so it's always, I must frustrate people when I give them the same answer. I'm like, there's no point in learning how to deal with that. It's just throwaway. Like you're going to first of all, you're barely ever going to get it. Right. And if you do, maybe it's a problem with the marketing, or maybe just send them testimonials before your sales call. Yeah. Like if you get that a lot, right. But also like have a look at the upstream. Like you're clearly not uncovering certain things, because like since doing NEPQ and selling in this methodology, I don't remember. I literally don't think I've had, can you send me to a client? Can I have a testimonial? Because it's like, it doesn't happen.
The only reason why they even say that is because they don't trust that what you're saying is going to get them the results that you said it could be. That's why they're saying, can you send me testimonials? That is the only reason. So like Matt's saying, if you're getting that objection a lot, it's because you haven't learned the right questions to ask in your sales process that creates urgency, where they start to view you as the trusted expert or the trusted authority, rather than how they view most salespeople over there in the corner, just another salesperson trying to sell me something, and they try to get rid of you, right? So if they do ask you to send you a testimony, you should just ask them, yeah, sure. So just so I know kind of what you're looking for, what would you like to see from those people? Oh, well, I want to ask them about this or that or this. Okay, well, what I can do, and that tells you their concern, right? So a lot of times you can help them resolve their concern. Yeah, well, I can do that possibly. Just so I know who to send over to you. What would you like to actually speak to them, just so I understand? Well, I'm nervous about this, or I have this question. Okay, well, what I can do is I can reach out to them, to see when they would be available to talk to you. Now, let's pretend that you talk to these clients of ours, and they talk to you about some of the same problems that you're having, that they have, that we solve for them. At that point, how do you want to proceed from here? So you have to get a commitment after you actually send those testimonials, like before you send to them. Otherwise, you will never hear from them again. You'll send them and they're gone. Yeah,
never. And then even like, no matter how good, I've sent them to like friends of mine who have done the program, right? They're like, they're good friends of mine, got good results. They're like, yeah, I'll sell the bejesus. Like, I'll tell them it's the most amazing thing on the planet. They're like, yeah, dude, it's amazing. Well, I remember one guy goes, you would be retarded not to do this. That's exactly what he said, right? It's a quote. He was like, this is the best thing ever. Guy still didn't do it.
Exactly.
So it's like, because like, that wasn't the problem. That was not the problem. That was just
concern. They had a different concern. And can you send me some testimonials was just a way to like cover their real objection. That's all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And if you guys are listening to this podcast and you are struggling with objections like that, make sure you go over to the Sales Revolution Facebook group. We go live all the time. Jeremy's constantly there answering questions. We're doing interviews with clients. We're doing live stuff. We have a 5-day challenge coming up. There's lots and lots of free resources there. Like if you enter that group, you should be able to get better at sales for free. and start to get to our little ecosystem where we're trying to teach people how to sell, in what we consider to be a better way.
Yeah, 100%. And, consequence questions, one person that does extremely well with this that I've watched a lot is Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins is like an advanced psychologist, right? That's really what NEPQ is. Like, it comes from behavioral science, comes from neuroscience, and it's basically working with human behavior. And I see somebody that does this really, really well. It's Tony Robbins. So he goes out on stage and he goes out in the crowd and he starts asking whoever stands up to say their problem, he starts asking him some questions. And you notice he always asks a consequence question like, what if you don't do anything about this? Something like that. And then what does the prospect in the audience do? They break down. It's like they cry because he's helping empower them to help them realize that they themselves have the power alone to change their situation. Their decision-making on what they're going to do from that point forward will determine if they solve the problems they just told him and themselves they had. He's empowering them. So we're doing that in the process. We're in the sales process, we're teaching you how to empower your prospects to question their way of thinking and realize that they can change their situation and all these problems. Here's where they're at, their current state. Here's where they want to be, their future state. Here's the gap, all these problems you've helped them discover. It can all be solved by what? Getting the funding together to purchase your solution.
That's the thing people don't realize. Money, like spending money, is really easy. I want you to sit down right now if you listen to this and raise your hand if you spent money today. Right? You had a problem. What did you do? I was hungry. There was food over there. I went and bought it. Like, my car was running out of gas. I went to a gas station. I got gas. Like, you have a problem. We are conditioned to solve it with spending money. Like, it's not a big deal. It's just not. So, like, it's fine. Like, if you have a problem and you need it solved, like, okay, that's like, this person needs money in exchange to solve my problem. Like, that's fine. It's just a totally normal transaction. So, like, if someone has a problem and you can help solve it, like, it's fine. Don't freak out about it.
And you got to, and everybody has to realize that most of your prospects you talk to, unless they are running out of gas, don't realize they even have a problem in the first place, or maybe they don't realize how bad their problem is or what the consequences is going to be if they don't do anything about solving the problem. One other way you can use consequence question that we haven't talked about is, let's say that, and I did a training on this a couple of weeks ago in our Facebook group, let's say that you have an existing client. So let's say that you're in a business or in B2B or whatever, or insurance, right? You have an existing client that's thinking about leaving your company to go with a competitor. How do you stop that? You just say, oh, you shouldn't go with them because they suck and blah, 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 blah. That's going to go in one ear out the other. You simply say, well, John, can I make a suggestion? Sure. Go ahead, Jeremy. Have you considered what could happen if switching to a different company doesn't get you the results that you're wanting? Now, at that point, do you think it's like, no, I haven't considered it. I'm just going to do it. No, they're not. They're going to be like, well, what do you mean? Well, and I'm not, I'd have to know a little bit more about this because I was going to ask you something. But if there was a way that you could get the same results that you want without having you to do all the work of changing companies, would you be open to looking at that as a possibility? Now, do you think they're going to say, nope, I would not be open? Of course they're going to be open. And then you can discover a little bit more about what's going on and help them stay with your company. So that's a way you can use consequence questions as well. That's not even in the structured format with that type of thing.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Whenever you need to, it works in everyday life.
Yeah.
Like, I use it all the time. My wife hates it.
What do you do? Tell us what you do to your wife, your poor wife.
I just try and sell her into stuff all the time. Like that. She's like, don't you use your mind tricks on me.
My wife does the same.
But I talk to my kid very NEPQ, like when I'm trying to teach something, like, why are you feeling that way? Like, I obviously use simpler words because there's only 5 and 2, but essentially, like, is that impacting you? What way? How? Explain, you know what I mean? And then, like, kind of push them through a process when I'm trying to teach him how to articulate his feelings, because like NEPQ, probing, clarifying questions, all that kind of stuff, like, they're very good at getting someone to articulate emotion.
Yeah.
And so like teaching a young child, like my kid gets super angry for like all kids do. They get really angry because they don't understand what they're feeling. They don't know how to articulate it. So if I can just talk him through a process, then he articulates it very well. And now at 5, he can articulate his emotions very eloquently. Like you can talk to him like he's an adult. You know, he's like, I'm feeling angry because of this, or I'm feeling upset, or I'm feeling scared. Like we've been moving around a lot. So he's been having some anxiety, right? Because we've been moving so much. And so it's been coming out as anger. Yeah. And I finally just sat down and talked him through it. He said he was scared. And then I understood, okay, that means he has anxiety. That's anxious. He just doesn't know how to articulate it. So just by communicating him with more effectively and taking the time to sit down and taking him through a process where I can uncover and probe and clarify, I was able to then go, oh, I know what that is. I can help with that. You know, but I can't help with a 5-year-old rage. I can't help that.
Like tell them to stop or whatever. You're not finding anything. Yeah. You know, I even asked my 18-year-old daughter who, you know, one of the reasons why we have this house out here is because I have 2 daughters now in college that go to school here, right? So Arizona State is local here. And so we wanted to have a place where we could come out, you know, blah, 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 when we wanted to visit with them. So I asked her, she just moved out here. She doesn't have a lot of money. And I'm like, hey, if you move out here 6 months before school even starts, because she graduated school early, I'm not going to pay all your rent. Like you're going to have to pay half. I'll pay half, you pay half. She's like, okay, deal. And she moved out. And I'm like, hey, so have you applied for jobs or what are you doing? Like, no, I haven't really done anything. I've just been hanging out with Cammie, her sister, and hanging out with my friends. I'm like, well, what are you going to do to pay your rent in a month if you don't go out and find a job? Because, you know, I'm only paying half. Consequence question. And she's like, oh, I don't know. Well, I'm serious. Like, what are you going to do?
Probably going to ask mom for the other half.
What are you going to do if you don't what are you going to do if you don't find this job and then your rent's due and I'm only paying half of it? What are you going to do then? Consequence question. So now she's out looking for jobs, internally motivated. Instead of me telling her she has to, I get her to tell herself, like, here are the ramifications if I don't do anything. Yeah. I'm going back to Missouri. I'm not going to be able to stay here and go to school.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. All right. I feel like we've kind of nailed what we need to nail without going on for too long. But any sort of final words?
No, just, you know, join the Facebook group. I mean, that's really the start of learning NEPQ, neuro-emotional persuasion questions. Like I said, Matt and I go live in there about 5 times a week on average. Either, you know, I go live about 3 times. Matt's about once or twice. We have trainers that go live as well. And we do a lot of resources in there that you have access to that we don't even have you pay for. Now, obviously, that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to be great at sales, if you want to crush it, make 20, 30, 40, 50,000 plus a month in commissions in any industry. We train, hundreds, if not over 1,000 industries at that point. Industries that I didn't even know exist sometimes. When I see that, I'm like, I didn't even know that existed. That's so weird. I never knew that.
I met a guy the other day. He's a coach and they teach people how to invest in mobile homes.
That industry I did not know about.
They buy cheap and flip.
That's interesting. See, and that's
like, cool, man.
That's a whole program I wouldn't even known about.
I go, does it work? And he goes, unbelievably well. I was like, okay, buying a caravan for $5,000, selling it for 12.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good return for sure. So, join the Facebook group Sales Revolution if you haven't yet. That's going to help you. You're going to get in there. You're going to hear some lives. You're going to start seeing stuff. And then, get in there, take some of our sources, message us in there. We have myself, our team in there messaging people about what they're learning and those type of things, and jump on a book call sometimes. We have tons of people that want to jump on book calls with us. We kind of go through their sales process, find out what their problem is, and here's where they're at commission-wise per month. Maybe they're making 3, 4, 5 grand a month. I really want to make 10, 15, 20, but there's something I'm missing. And we have you get into our training programs, like our NEPQ 3.0, 2.0, our Advanced Inner Circle, where we have you go through our virtual training, our live role playing. And to really get massive results, you've got to learn the right skills. And it all starts by joining the Facebook group and then progressing through that process, 100%. All right, Absolutely. Matt. Hope you don't freeze out there. I'm going to go outside here in Arizona where I'm at today.
Some sunbacon.
92 degrees. I'm going to get a nice tan. Thanks for being
Absolutely.
on.
Enjoy.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. right over there. They're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even seven-figure earners. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training. So be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're gonna win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about.